Have you ever actually stopped to think about what it takes to govern the digital spaces we use literally every single day? I mean, just imagine trying to set ground rules for a local neighborhood meeting or, a dinner party. Now, imagine that same gathering has nearly half the population of the entire planet in attendance. The logistical and ethical challenges there are just absolutely staggering. So, in today's Explainer, we are looking really closely at the architecture behind Meta's community standards. We're going to figure out exactly how they manage to govern such a massive digital ecosystem. Okay, let's dive into this. Here's our structural roadmap for the Explainer today. 1. Governing 3 billion users. 2. A commitment to voice. 3. The 4 core pillars. 4. Drawing the line. And 5. Putting the public first. All right, starting off with Section 1, governing 3 billion users. Before we can even touch the rules themselves, we really have to grasp the sheer macro-level scale of the platforms we're talking about today. 3 billion users worldwide. Seriously, that is not a typo. To put that astronomical number into perspective, that is more than the populations of China, India, and the United States completely combined. We are talking about nearly half the globe's population all coexisting, sharing, and communicating in one massive digital ecosystem. Managing a community of this size, it's entirely unprecedented in human history. And it's absolutely crucial to remember that we aren't just talking about one single website here. Whether you're sharing a quick photo on Instagram, posting a big life update on Facebook, jumping into a really fast-paced conversation on Threads, or just chatting directly with a friend on Messenger, you are falling under the exact same overarching umbrella of community standards. Meta has to maintain safe communication across all these highly diverse, distinct platforms simultaneously. Because think about it, each of these apps has its own completely unique culture, its own features, and its own vibe for how people interact. Yet the whole shebang relies on the exact same foundational rules. Moving right along to Section 2, a commitment to voice. Here is where we hit the central tension of governing the internet. How in the world do you balance a massive commitment to open, free expression with the absolute necessity of keeping order and preventing real harm? Well, there's a fascinating exception to the rules that kind of answers this. Meta's primary goal is to create a place for open and free expression, right? So they explicitly state that they will actually allow content that violates their standard rules, but only if that content is deemed newsworthy and in the public interest. Now, what's really interesting about this is that they are actively prioritizing international human rights standards above just a rigid black and white rulebook. But make no mistake, if it doesn't meet that extremely high, exceptional bar of public interest, the violating content is getting removed. But that begs the question, who actually makes these rules? Because these boundaries aren't just created in a vacuum by a handful of people isolated in some corporate boardroom. To make sure these standards are actually fair and effective across the entire globe, they're continuously updated through incredibly diverse global feedback. Meta relies on input from the public, deep insights from tech experts, guidance from public safety officials, and the critical perspectives of human rights advocates. But honestly, the most important feedback comes from you. The architecture relies heavily on users actively reporting harmful content, acting as kind of a frontline digital neighborhood watch to flag violations directly to human reviewers and automated systems. It is a constantly evolving, massive collaborative process. Which brings us nicely to Section 3, the 4 core pillars. Okay, let's really break this down. Everything we've talked about so far rests directly on these 4 specific core values: authenticity, privacy, safety, and dignity. This right here is the micro-level architectural foundation that keeps this entire massive digital city standing. It's the philosophical framework that dictates exactly what is and what isn't allowed on platforms like Instagram. So let's look at why each one of these matters so much to your daily scrolling. First up is authenticity. The rules strictly require that content must be authentic, meaning users are completely disallowed from misrepresenting who they are or what they are doing. And why does this matter? Because authenticity acts as the absolute bedrock for sharing. I mean, if you are going to share personal photos or vulnerable thoughts with friends and family, you absolutely need a fundamental trust in the digital environment around you. Authentic identity representation stops inauthentic behavior in its tracks and builds that desperately needed trust. The second pillar is privacy. Personal privacy and the protection of your information are completely central to the platform's overall design. But notice that privacy here isn't just framed as, hiding from the world. It's actually the active mechanism that allows people to truly be themselves.
By giving users the absolute power to choose exactly how and when they share their experiences and thoughts online, privacy is what actually empowers people to connect with others more easily and a whole lot more securely.
Third is safety. So the crucial point is that physical, real-world security is a massive primary driver behind content removal. Meta is committed to ensuring their platforms are safe by strictly disallowing threatening, marginalizing, and oppressive content. Let's look at a very concrete example. If someone posts a rumor inciting people to bring weapons to a local protest, well, that isn't protected free speech. That is an immediate physical threat, and it will be swiftly removed to protect real bodies on real streets. The digital rules exist specifically to protect the physical world. And the final foundational pillar is dignity. This one is rooted in the powerful universal principle that all people are equal in dignity and rights. To put it simply, it is the baseline expectation of human respect required to even participate in this community. Meta expects that people will respect others and will absolutely not harass or degrade each other. Ultimately, for a 3 billion person city to actually function, a baseline respect for the dignity of your digital neighbors isn't just a nice to have, it's a structural necessity.
All right, moving into section 4, drawing the line.
So we know the 4 pillars now. Let's shift the narrative a bit to see exactly where the boundaries are drawn. And this brilliantly illustrates what happens when those pillars are tested. The boundaries fall into 3 distinct categories of harm. First, under real-world harm, we see strictly prohibited violations like violence and incitement, coordinating dangerous organizations, and promoting suicide or self-injury. Then, under exploitation and abuse, there's a firm clinical line drawn against child and adult sexual exploitation, bullying, harassment, and hateful conduct. And finally, under digital integrity, we see the rules protecting the ecosystem itself, right? Things like stopping fraud, scams, cybersecurity breaches, misinformation, and spam. It's a comprehensive architecture carefully designed to protect those core pillars we just went over.
And finally, section 5, putting the public first.
We are bringing our explainer to its concluding phase now, and we really want to tie all of these massive, global policies directly back to your everyday experience as a user. Governing these spaces isn't just some automated process handled purely by cold, unfeeling algorithms. It is a highly active, dedicated human effort. Meta, together with services like Instagram, aims squarely at putting the public first by continuously developing policies to protect your safety and your privacy at all times. Combined with the millions of user reports filed daily, it's a dedicated evolution to keep pace with exactly how we communicate in the modern world. Which leaves us with this final, incredibly complex question to chew on as we wrap up today. How do we successfully balance complete freedom of expression with the absolute necessity of digital safety for half the globe's population? I mean, it is easily one of the greatest architectural challenges of our modern age, and it's a blueprint that is quite literally being rewritten every single day. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep questioning the digital world around you, and I will see you next time.